Thank you. It is Wednesday, April 1st, and I'd like to call to order the District of Sechelt regular council meeting. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. So we have no appointments and delegations, no proclamations. We move right to number 5, adoption of minutes of previous council meetings. So minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of March 4th. That starts on page 4. Look for a motion to adopt the minutes as presented. Moved. Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. And the minutes of the 3:30 p.m. regular council meeting of Wednesday, March 25th. Motion to adopt as presented. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, so let's move on to the committee minutes and reports. Minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of February 26th for receipt and endorsement. This is item 7.1, pages 16 through 24. Would someone like to move receipt and endorsement? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Advisory Planning Commission meeting of March 3rd, 2020, item 7.2. This is for receipt. Move receipt, second, all in favor? Thank you. And minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of March 11th for receipt and endorsement, item 7.3, pages 30 to 35. Moved. And seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And item 7.4, for receipt, Community Investment Program Grant Review Committee meeting of March 18th, pages 36 to 44. All right, moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you.
Councillor Lamb has joined.
Yes.
I'm still here.
You're still here? Okay. Item 7.5, minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of March 25th for receipt and endorsement, page 45 through 46. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So we're at item 8.1A. This is bylaw for first reading. Zoning amendment bylaw number 25-304 for Sunshine Coast Community Services. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor of receipt. Thank you. And we turn it over to Sven Kobowitz.
Thank you.
Well,
Okay, hopefully you can see that. So the application in front of council today is for a rezoning application for 5638 Inlet Avenue. It's the current site of Sunshine Coast Community Service. The Sunshine Coast Community Services Society, they're located at the end of Inlet Avenue. The property location is highlighted in red here, and the current rezoning application is proposing a 6-story or 22-meter mixed-use building. It's intended to accommodate 34 residential units for women and women with children. The first 2 floors of the building will feature office and programming space for Sunshine Coast Community Services. So essentially, this is a fairly significant expansion of the current building on the site. There's also additional program space proposed on the northern portion of the site where the food bank is currently located. So the existing conditions on the site, it's significantly encumbered by the BC Hydro power lines that pretty much bisect the property. That under the power lines, there's a very limited ability to construct anything. All buildings need to be temporary. So the expansion has to take place pretty much adjacent to Inlet Avenue. That's the only significant area of the property that is unencumbered by the right-of-way. The existing food bank building is permitted to be partially in the right-of-way. That was done through permission from BC Hydro, and the applicant's currently in negotiation to replace that building with another modular building that might be newer that could be used for additional program space as well, and potentially a youth center, although that hasn't been determined yet. So we have a view here of a community services existing building, and it's as you can see, it's currently just a single level building that houses all of the programming space. The existing zoning and OCP designations in the area are displayed here. The site is zoned C2 or commercial 2. That's predominantly what most of downtown Sechelt is zoned. This is a zone appropriate for mixed uses, including residential, commercial, retail, service businesses, and also community services, such as is being proposed and has been on the site for quite some time. For the OCP designation, again, it's the downtown center designation, and all of the proposed uses conform to those OCP designations. The proposal as currently submitted is fully in compliance with the OCP. Specifically, OCP policy 6.2 calls out that downtown Sechelt is the appropriate location for community services. Additionally, policy 6.13 specifically allows council to consider additional building height on buildings located downtown of up to 6 stories, provided they're not in waterfront locations and that certain conditions are met, including views not being impacted, and that the height can be adequately integrated into the neighborhood. For zoning compliance, this proposal is predominantly in compliance with zoning except for height. It's a fairly significant increase to the height, as currently only 3-story buildings or 10.5 meter buildings are permitted on the property, and this would be an increase to 22 meters or 6 stories. There's no changes in use that are permitted or anything else. The applicant is invoking the density bonusing provisions in the C2 zone for an additional 5 units above what the base density is permitted. 20% of that increase in density has to be or must be affordable, which would work out to 1 unit. However, in this case, the proposal is inherently tied to affordable housing, and it's proposed that all the units would meet the affordable housing criteria. So the amenities that are currently proposed far exceed what the requirement would be under the density bonusing option. A quick overview of the proposal, although the staff report goes into more detail. The proposed site layout would be, again, some sort of a facility on the northern portion of the property. Public amenity space would predominantly be located under the BC Hydro right-of-way, along with a parking area. And the main building would be, as I was saying, located adjacent to the Inlet Avenue cul-de-sac near the southern portion of the property. The main entrance to the property would be reconfigured to be off of Lamprey Lane, while still having an entrance and being serviced off Inlet Avenue as well. But the parking and residential parking, staff parking would all be towards the rear of the building. Again, a few clips that were provided by the applicant showing the density bonus portion, as well as the 6 stories and the community services portion on the first 2 floors. And some initial renderings and building massing models have been provided, although these are just preliminary at this point. The building envelope, like I say, is quite constrained due to the BC Hydro right-of-way, but the maximum height will be limited to 20 meters as is currently proposed. So staff have 3 recommendations for council: that the zoning bylaw be given first reading, and that we begin the referral process. and also that the applicant be instructed to host a public information meeting as well. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Now I
Hello.
have to, yeah, hang on one second. I have to move around here to be able to see everybody. There we go. Councillor Lamb. Oh, there you are. Okay. All I can see usually is the top of your head, so you have to get a little closer to the mic. Okay, so you have a question?
Well, I don't have a question. I just have information under, I believe under where the food bank goes, I believe that the Fortis gas line goes through there also. And that would be another restrictive.
Okay, and Sven?
Since we'll be undertaking the referral process, Fortis Gas will be getting a referral as well, and they will certainly give us comments or restrictions related to that when that time comes.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? I had one question about the public information meeting. How do we propose that the applicant actually do that, given what we're dealing with right now? They have done a number of public information sessions already.
Yeah, the public information meeting is a requirement of our procedures bylaw. The exact format of that is somewhat open-ended. It's not specified exactly what that format is. So we'll certainly be talking to the applicant and coming up with a format that would still meet the intent of a public information meeting. But we'll have to see as the current situation evolves what form that might take, and whether some engagement can be done online versus fully out in the open.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed that the front of the building is essentially at the back. So it's flipping around from what it is now. So the front of more appropriate term is front of the building is on the north side, whereas currently it's on the south side. In terms of a public accessibility and fit with the neighborhood, I think it'd be more appropriate if the entrance was on the south side. Just given that it's kind of like the end of Inlet Street, it's very identifiable. And they do have a bit of a kind of community there, especially with the Belmar building right beside and a couple retail down below. Am I correct in saying that the front of the building is on the north side?
So I believe that the office entrances would remain on the south side. There would still be a public entrance at Inlet Avenue, similar to there is now. There's also a loading area, commercial loading area, and things like that for the offices and program space. So the front of the building will still be predominantly the front, although I believe the residential entrance is proposed to be at the rear. But most of these items would be addressed in much more detail at the development permit stage. This development would be subject to the multifamily and downtown development permit area, where facade and look and form and character of the building, as well as those kind of concerns that you had, would be addressed in much more detail.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go
absolutely.
ahead.
I just wanted to give a little heads up on that one, that I would like to see the inlet side considered as the front of the building when we do get into that stage. So thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I was trying to use the raise hand function, but that's okay. We'll have to teach the rest of everybody else how to use it. Is the building intended to be concrete or wood frame? Sorry, I don't know if it's in there. I missed it.
I don't believe that's been determined at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so there are some recommendations on page 47. So would anybody like to make those? Councillor Toth?
I will move recommendation 2, the council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 25-304/2020 Recommendation 3, that staff refer the application to relevant stakeholders, agencies, and the Advisory Planning Commission for comment. And recommendation 4, that the applicant host a public information meeting pertaining to the proposed development.
Okay, and I saw Councillor McLean seconded that. Actually, we had a few people second that. All those in favor? Thank you. So let's move to the zoning amendment bylaw 8.1B on page 78. This is District of Sea Shelf bylaw number 25-304 2020 for Sunshine Coast Community Services, being a bylaw to amend District of Sea Shelf zoning bylaw number 25 1987. I'd look for someone to move first reading. First reading, seconded. All those in favor of first reading? Thank you. All right, so now that goes out for referral. Is that correct? I think he's gone.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So 8.2A, sorry,
Question
Councillor
before-
Toth, yes.
It also mentions public hearing to be held before a second reading.
Public information,
Potential.
sorry, public information session before second reading.
Okay, on page 75, it says public hearing
Sorry, okay.
under the date listings.
Okay, so I think that's an error. I think it's coming back to us for second reading before it would go out for public hearing. I think that's our new process. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is likely a template that will require updating.
Okay, thank you.
So my original question that I was headed to, have we heard anything from the province yet on digital public hearings yet?
I think I'll turn to staff for that. Corporate officer?
Thank you,
Yeah,
Madam
you're
Chair.
unmuted. You're good?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we have heard from the province somewhat. All local governments were issued guidelines on what expectations are with the recent public health officers' orders around public meetings. And, you know, in a nutshell, of course, we must follow the public health officers' recommendations, and we're being strong. The strong suggestion is that we find other ways to continue to still allow those democratic processes to take place. So I can advise that right now we're looking at broadening our existing IT software to allow for example, virtual public hearing meetings. You know, we are aware that those are going to be coming up. So we hope to have more information about that soon, but we are looking at making it possible to have a virtual public hearing.
Thank you. Does that answer your question
Yeah, I think so.
sufficiently?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on to the next item? All right, so item 8.2, this is for 3 readings in front of us. This is the 2019 to 2023 financial plan amendment bylaw number 581-1 2020. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. At the February 19 regular council meeting, this report came forward with recommendations for first 3 readings of the financial plan amendment bylaw. At the meeting, council carried a motion that the bylaw be referred back to staff to amend the parcel tax refund to reflect the expected liability levels. The report before you today has kept the liability levels at the same values with the intention to keep the refund period open for 1 further year as the council resolution on February 19th. So the changes before you in the financial plan amendment are all the same from February 19th with the exception for that sewer change for the sewer refund. I won't go into detail because I did present each of these items at the February 19th meeting, but I'm happy to answer any further questions about any of the particular items before you today. Thank you.
All right, any questions? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, this is a comment that I forgot the last time around, I think. Seems like a year ago. But I'd like to see these budget amendments happen a little more often. So ideally at the stage of our quarterly report rather than just at the end of the year. I think it's a natural process that our budget does change, but to be able to keep track of that throughout the year would be valuable.
Sure, that can be arranged.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So there's a recommendation on page 77 that we proceed with giving first, second, and third reading to District of Sechelt 2019 to 2023 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 581-2 2020. Someone like to make that recommendation? Moved, and is there a seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. So we'll move to page 82. This is item 8.2B, District of Sechelt 2019 to 2023 Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw number 581-2 2020, a bylaw to amend the District of Sechelt 2019 to 2023 Financial Plan. Would someone like to move first reading? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And second reading? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then third reading? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. All right, we move on to item 10.1, cultural statistics strategy update. Tongue twister. First motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Ms. Smith, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. So before you is a report that is for information only. It is to bring council's awareness to the fact that we are now part of the cultural statistics strategy, which is a nationwide resource providing statistics on the impact that culture has to our local GDP. I would like to just point out that on the last page of this report, the infographic that is provided, there are a few things that are not captured in that. So for example, if there is a culture related business that is not actually registered as a business, it will not be captured in here. Or if they are earning less than $30,000 a year, which I'm sure you can imagine that many people working in arts and culture are actually below that level as well. If when they reply to the census, if arts and culture was not their primary occupation. So this will only capture data from if arts and culture was the primary occupation. And it's also not capturing sort of the economic spin-off benefits that many of our festivals and events have. So it's limited, but it is giving us an idea of what the impact culture has in our local economy.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Toth.
Where is the data pulled from for this? You mentioned the census, and you mentioned the $30,000 limit, which I assume means they're pulling GST numbers into this as well. I'm just wondering what other sources of information go into this.
Yeah, the $30,000 limit is to be in the business register. So if you're under 30,000, then you wouldn't be appearing in that. So it's basically StatsCan data and census data that they're pulling from.
Thank you. Any other questions? Given what we're going through right now, and the fact that the majority of these people in this sector basically are unemployed, that's a huge hit if you look at the impact on our economy. And we're going to need to see what we can do to support them going forward, because they're what makes our community our community. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I do think this is an underestimate. I think we mentioned some of the reasons why, but I think there are a lot more people than 110 people in Seashell working in arts. This is very valuable information, though, even though it is an underestimate. So is there an ongoing maintenance? Like, will we be able to check back on this next year and see how it changes? Or when do we hear back with the next data set? Is it the next census, or can we get it sooner?
We will get updated information on an annual basis, but it's always a little bit behind. So we will be able to update council on this on an annual basis, yes. And you're right that it is clearly an underestimate. It's an underestimate for probably every community, because even if you're in a big city, many people working in the arts are working part-time, or working or the portion of their income that comes from the arts is less than $30,000 a year.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Thank you for what you contribute to us and to the community with all the work you do in the arts and culture field. It makes a difference.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
All right, let's move on to item 10.2, Liquid Waste Management Plan, Stage 2 Update, Steering and Technical Advisory Committees. First, a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Corporate Officer, did you want to speak to this or let the report stand? All right, there you go, you're unmuted.
Your worship, nothing really to speak to, but if you have any questions, be pleased to answer them. I do note that we need to insert a council member name, I guess, under recommendation 2. I should note that. And also that council may wish to appoint an alternate.
Okay. I know Councillor Lamb has indicated he'd be interested in being on this committee. Is there anybody else who'd be interested in being on this committee? So this is the steering committee. So this committee will actually be determining what the format is going forward and how we engage with the community to ensure that we have community input. That's what this is all about. So Councillor Lamb said he would take on the chair or the position. Councillor Toth?
I'm happy to sit as Councillor Lamb's alternate if nobody else wants to do it.
Okay. That works. All right, everybody's nodding. Okay, so we'll put in Councillor Lamb as the council member on the committee with Councillor Toth as the alternate. Would someone like to move recommendation 2? Yes, Councillor Lamb.
I'm just kind of, so I'm kind of wondering when was this process started? Because we haven't started it in our time frame.
No, we haven't. Part of it is we were reaching out to some of the other jurisdictions to ensure that they would come forward with, a member for on this committee. And we happened to run into the Shishalt Nation election period. And so they had to wait until the election was completed before they could actually put somebody forward.
But when was the process started, like last year, or was it started 2 years ago, or?
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay. And so we have, it says here, Don Nash is he works for Kirtland, whatever.
Kerwood Lydell, I believe.
Lydell, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. And so is this committee then, does it cover the coast? Like Gibson's has a sewage treatment plant down there. And so are we trying to, I guess, kind of give direction to the whole coast as to how we're going to deal with liquid waste? Is that what the program is?
No, this is District of Seashalt Liquid Waste Management Plan. So it's our plan for our area. And part of it would be the septage receiving, yes.
Right. Yeah.
But right now we have areas in the District of Seashalt that are in our urban containment boundary that have no intention of getting sewer. So it's looking at all of those and identifying what our plans are moving forward with liquid waste in our district.
Okay. Yeah, and MO, the Ministry of Environment requires the appointees. Is that
Yes.
okay? Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm good to go. And you want me to chair this thing?
No, you're one of the members on it. You're on this
Okay,
the
that's
steering
good.
committee.
That's good.
I mean, you don't have to do that. I'm sure we can take somebody else in there if you'd like.
No, I'm good. I'm
Good with that? Okay.
I got a pretty good background. I know a little bit about it, so I'm good to go. Yeah.
And we have the technical advisory committee as well, right? So we have the technical expertise there to provide that type of information. Okay. All right, would someone like to make a recommendation then? Councillor McLean, what would you like to do?
I'll move recommendation 2 that council appoint the following people to the District of Sechelt Liquid Waste Management Steering Committee. Sunshine Coast Regional District Director A. Ties, Sechelt Nation Chief W. Paul, Sechelt Councillor Tom Lamb, and the following people to the District of Sechelt Liquid Waste Management Technical Advisory Committee: Shane Walkley, Peter Jamayoff, Darren Kootenay, Senath Bandera, and Don Nash, and that Alton Toth be appointed as alternate for Councillor Lamb.
All right, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded, okay. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Move on to item 10.3. This is the report with regards to the 2020 Community Investment Program annual grants. First, a motion to receive the report. All in favor? Thank you. And then would anybody like to speak to this? Yeah, Siobhan?
Yes. Thank you. So for many years, the District of Sechelt has supported our local nonprofit sector through grants. It's because our municipality recognizes the vital role that these organizations play in ensuring the social, cultural, and environmental well-being of our community. And now more than ever, that support is needed, both support that we can provide for these groups and support that these groups can provide to our greater community in a time of crisis. The recommendations before you are from our Community Investment Program Grant Committee. This committee is made up of community volunteers who spend numerous hours poring over the grant applications, along with an elected official as chair. This year, we had Councillor McLean step in for Councillor Rowe. In late 2019, Council approved an allocation of funds for the 2020 annual grant program. And the recommendations presented to you tonight are within that Council approved budget. This was recognizing our own financial constraints as an organization right now and the need to work within a pre-approved budget. Just so you're aware, staff are currently in touch with all grant applicants in order to better assess whether any of the projects that were applied for are going to be significantly modified, delayed, rescheduled, or canceled altogether. After hearing feedback over the last week from these groups, it is clear that virtually all of them are trying to go ahead. Many of the projects have either already started, are in development, costs have been incurred, and in some cases, they are having to modify the programs or postponing them. But for the most part, they are all moving ahead. You'll notice that in the financial implications section of this report, we did indicate that we would want the grant applicants, anyone being awarded a grant to actually complete an agreement with the District of Sechelt that would ask for funds to be returned if a project were to be canceled. After speaking with these groups at length over the last week, I'm recommending that we allow for a little bit more flexibility in our agreements. The intent of that statement in the report was so that we might reallocate any freed up funds, reallocating them within the nonprofit sector itself. However, it's clear that that might not actually be very realistic, but at the very least, we would like the flexibility to allow grant applicants to put funds towards any eligible costs already incurred, and for programs, even if ultimately they do end up needing to be canceled, and other eligible reasonable costs of those cancellations. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to respond.
All right, any questions? Councillor Toth, then Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Siobhan, for mentioning that, because that's something I had flagged. I was thinking it could be quite the hardship for an organization to have started down that road and sunk a bunch of costs and then have to repay their grant because their event got canceled. So for sure, I'm okay with flexibility on recollecting.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to thank the committee for all the hard work that they put into evaluating these. I came in at the very last minute. So I got all the notes from Councillor Rowe, who was supposed to chair the committee. So I took that and had the discussion with everyone on the committee. They put the thought in. When we had this meeting, it was still fairly early days in the COVID situation, but it was the first meeting that we had fully digitally. So I think we're all quite aware of the implications that we were heading into when we did make these decisions. And yeah, I just wanted to put that in there.
Okay, so then just to follow up with regards to your comment about if the events don't go ahead, I understand they may have some costs, and I'm totally okay with covering those costs, but would the remaining funds, like is the agreement such that the remaining funds would still be returned to us if the event doesn't go forward, or how is that piece then handled?
We're going to need to work with each of these groups on a case-by-case basis, particularly the ones that are either not currently able to operate because they've had to close, or ones where they're still unsure whether or not the event will move forward. You'll notice that of the grants being requested this evening, that the recommendations are relatively small. So the total budget is less than $50,000, and on an individual basis, some of these grants are only $500, $1,000. So the potential for recovering costs is pretty minimal, but we will work directly with groups. We did hear back from 16 of the 20 groups, and they provided very detailed responses in terms of what types of unrecoverable costs they've already incurred, and what their contingency plans are and how they plan to move forward. So we can work with that, and any possibility of cost recovery or significant changes, we can bring that back to council for direction if need be.
Okay, given the huge impact on this whole sector, right? And we just saw the previous report where it showed their contribution to the GDP of our area. If there is additional funds that these groups will not be expending, not be expending on their programs, there's going to be lots of other programs and activities, for example, in this sector that could probably use the funds to get something else potentially moving forward. So I think we're going to have to be on top of what's going forward. And I know that that's something you'll be doing. So I totally understand where, your conversations with them. I'm totally in alignment with them. And we need to do what we can to assist the sector in moving forward when we can. We're all in that uncertain stage at this point. Any further questions? Councillor Rowe?
Just thanks to Siobhan, as always, for all the work, and to Matt for being so darn flexible at the last minute. And I think it's just important also to point out to not all of these are in relation to events that would be affected by COVID. So, you know, I agree with being flexible, and I think, you know, one of the probably the hardest maybe discussion to have is, you know, is it realistic, for instance, for an event that is planned for July to think about going forward when the medical health officer or Dr. Henry is saying summer at the earliest. So I think that it's that sort of touchy conversation around, like, I wouldn't want somebody to go and book and pay for something in August, for instance, at this point. If you know what I'm saying. But I'm happy to be flexible, and I know that Siobhan will have those conversations. So I'm all good.
Okay, Siobhan?
So just as a note, most of the festivals and events that are included in this list are not taking place until later in the year. So they're faced with the challenge of investing a lot right now in terms of advertising, marketing, and producing program guides. Some of the bigger ones, booking accommodations and flights for out of town performers. Of course, there's no such thing as travel insurance anymore. And then if in the end these get canceled, they don't have the possibility of recouping ticket costs or any other earned revenues. For those that are not festivals and events, there are some organizations that provide essential services for our community, such as Arrowhead. They've had to completely rethink how they provide services. And as soon as they're able to get fully up and running again, providing in-person services, they will. And so a lot of these groups are going to have a lot of catching up to do as soon as they're able to open up fully again. And so we know that even though on the surface, we might think that because things are a little bit quieter right now, that they're not spending money. It's just not true. We have lots of groups that they all still have to pay their bills. It's a big challenge for everyone, but we know that these are the groups that really bring our community together in all different ways. And they provide the social supports that we need in our community to make our community as great as it is. So it's really critical that we do provide whatever support we can, since we know that they will be potentially losing a lot of other support in terms of the ability to actually host fundraising events and activities, the ability to get local sponsorships from small businesses and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So we have a number of recommendations in front of us. 2.1 to 2.22. Councillor Toth. So Councillor Rowe and Councillor Toth, first and second. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you, Siobhan, Brenda, Matt, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to get to it earlier during the minutes, but we skipped over that, so I'm going to talk about it here. There is one grant that was awarded to the Special Olympics. This is a grant to provide rental fees to the pool, which is an SCRD facility. The committee made a recommendation to bring this up to the SCRD because the committee felt that it's a little unfair that Seashelt is paying the SCRD for an SCRD facility. The committee would prefer that it is potentially an SCRD program to give discounts to some groups to access their facilities. So if I pull up, if we look on our agenda, that recommendation is on page 36, recommendation 2 of the CIP Grant Committee. That the committee recommend council direct staff to reach out to the Sunshine Coast Regional District to discuss the matter of community organizations requesting Community Investment Program grant funding to cover the cost of SCRD facility rentals. So I want that to throw it out there to the group and see if anyone would like to move that up to the SCRD. And to the mayor, I think you muted yourself.
I thought I was muted. Okay, page 36, did you say? yes, page 36,
Bottom of
recommendation
page
number 2.
36. Yep.
Okay, I know there's a reason why they don't do this. They don't do this for anybody. And I don't remember what the reason is. So we can move this. They will come back with an explanation.
They'll say their bylaws don't allow it. So there's a youth rate, an adult rate, and a nonprofit rate, and that's all they do.
It's more, I think it's to do with the way the funding of recreation happens. Something to do with that, but off the top of my head, I can't think of what it is. But so yes, let's move this recommendation and we'll get a response. We'll get some clarity anyway around this. Councillor Toth moves that recommendation.
Well,
Or
I'm
did you
moving
say
it, but I
speak
also had a comment to make on it.
Okay, so moved and seconded by Councillor Kuster, and then comment.
It might be worth, because the Special Olympics group is not just here in Seashelt, it might be worth suggesting that they also reach out to the SCRD grant and aid programs.
Councillor
They
McLean.
were advised of that last year as well. Oh, sorry, I'm speaking out of turn.
So they were advised of that last year as well.
Yeah.
And they have applied this year, according to their Seashelt grant application. So they applied for a lower amount from Seashelt than they did last year.
All those in favor of the recommendation? Thank you. All right, so let's go back. Anything further, Councillor McLean? Let's move on to item 10.4. This is local government meetings and bylaw process ministerial order during this COVID-19 pandemic. First motion to receive the report. All those in favor? Thank you. And turn over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for council's information, just to sort of go over what you see in front of you. On March 26th, there was a ministerial order adopted called the Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Process COVID-19 Ministerial Order. And in essence, what this does is supersede the Local Government Act and the Community Charter in a few places. I've noted a few highlighted areas there, beginning on page 157, the first page of the actual order. And so just to note that the first area that the order supersedes the current legislation is that it says that that council meeting, that the public does not have to be at an open council meeting for that meeting to still take place in an effort to carry out the COVID-19 orders and recommendations. As we're doing tonight, we will continue to do everything we can to keep the meetings in a format that the public can participate. And we are working on, as I say, even broadening what we do now to perhaps allow the public to phone in and participate in some ways in the meetings. The next item on page 158, electronic meetings, municipalities. This section basically supersedes the council's electronic meetings portion of its procedure bylaw, and it says that all members of council can participate electronically and all members will be deemed to be present at the meeting for the purposes of voting, etc. And then the third highlighted item is number 9 on page 159, and it says the community charter has a requirement, as you all are aware, that there must be a 24-hour period between third and adoption of bylaws, except for official community plans and zoning amendment bylaws, but all other bylaws, there should be that 24 hours. And this order says that that doesn't have to be the case. And that will allow councils to do business without having to get together as often and have staff in the office as often. So it's just there for council's information. Thank you.
So in other words, with this financial plan bylaw that came before us tonight, we did 3 readings. We could have actually done adoption as well and had, rather than bringing it back to the next meeting.
We could have, your worship, and it went through my mind when council was dealing with that item, and I thought, let's not confuse things and carry
Okay,
it. Moving forward, yes, we will be able to do that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of our corporate officer on this one? All right, moving on to item 10.5, Chief Administrative Officer's Report. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Yates.
Not a lot to add to the report itself, Your Worship, but I did want to note that the staff has done a phenomenal job of transitioning from working in the office to working at home and dealing with a whole new world. Our commitment and support of the regional EOC has been phenomenal with the 4 or 5 people that we've placed directly in roles over there, as well as the numerous people that are supporting that group as well. And in addition to that, as you can see from this agenda, although a slightly smaller one at 226 pages, staff are still managing to get work done in addition to EOC commitments. So just just sort of a round of applause to all of them that they're keeping their mental health up and still managing to get things done. It's very much appreciated by everybody.
I have to say that the first week, so it'd be the week of the 16th, I think it was on the Tuesday. Was it the Tuesday? We had a province-wide call with or maybe it was the Thursday of that week with so province-wide call with the minister, Minister Farnworth, Minister Robinson, Bonnie Henry, and EMBC. And CAO and I were both on that call, and it was with all the mayors and chairs and CAOs in the province. And earlier that week, by Tuesday afternoon, all of our staff were working from home and we're all set up with technology. We got on that call on Thursday, and there were lots of municipalities and regional districts in the province who had no idea what to do. They had no idea how to move things forward. They didn't have plans in place. And our staff had anticipated some of this, had done some of the work the previous week, and Monday of that week had just gone forward with implementation. So kudos to all of you for just taking it on and making it happen. It's been, we've had the odd hiccup here and there, but it's actually been very smooth. And kudos to council too for just taking this on and running with it. We're doing all our meetings using Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and it's just been seamless. Things are just happening. So thank you. Councillor Toth.
Yeah, and I understand that there are regional districts near us that are still struggling with the electronic meetings. So yeah, thank you to our staff. The regional district, of course, started down the Zoom road a little bit before all of this broke because they were looking at agenda review meetings. Doesn't make sense to drive all the way from Pender Harbor for a 10-minute agenda review meeting, for example. Although I do notice that tonight we've got at least 3 staff who are actually still in the office, and I recognize why you have to be there, but thank you for being there tonight, even though we're not.
Thank you. All right. So let's move on to councilors' reports. Item 11.1. So we'll do them in the order I have them on my screen here. So Councillor Rowe will go first, and then Councillor McLean, Councillor Toth, Councillor Kuster, and then Councillor Lamb. So Councillor Rowe, you're up first.
Well, I don't really have too much to say. I've pretty much been in the thick of it with my job, with my day job. And just thanks to everybody for all the support. Special thanks to Julie, Lucy, and the Parks Department on a personal note for helping me set up the clinic at Seaside Center. It's been interesting because it makes me proud on many levels when I walk in there, both as a nurse and as a counselor. So that's an incredible service that we're offering our community. So I'm not ashamed to say that other than reading the agenda, I've done absolutely nothing else in my political life since March the 6th. But thanks for all the notes, and Darnelda, thanks for soup. And hopefully this time next month, things will be a bit more clear. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a weird couple of weeks. I spent a lot of time in my house, and I can feel for the people who are under financial strain, who have been laid off, who have had their hours cut, who have had their businesses closed and customers dry up. I think there's a lot of people who are feeling that right now. And I want to commend the SCRD directors for making drastic changes to their budgets to reflect that changed economic nature. And thank you all the nurses, doctors, first responders, and essential workers out there. In terms of what I've been doing, I have joined the Sunshine Coast Community Task Force. I think I'll let the mayor speak to what the task force is exactly, but it's essentially to respond to community impacts from the COVID outbreak. Specifically, I'm the chair of the fundraising committee. So I'm going to be working with local not-for-profits to try and direct funds from private individuals in a more strategic way. So the first step I'm going to be doing is contacting not-for-profits to understand where they're at and identify where the greatest need is in the community. So that's taken up a lot of time in the last week, and that's going to be my main focus for at least the next few months.
Thank you for taking that on. Councillor Toth.
Thought I hit the button. I don't have too much to report from a council perspective. I've been busy with a lot of SCRD meetings and including some emergency meetings. I do want to say thank you to Councillor Rowe and all of our nurses and emergency services staff for preparing for the worst, and here's hoping that it does not come to that.
Councillor Kuster.
Okay, I don't have a lot to really discuss, I think, either. I believe we had actually, Matt and I, we were at a housing meeting. That seemed like forever ago. And there was just a few of us there, but we did do that before this all got crazy. It was really good. We had two new members join. It was good to have some different perspectives, and we went over our survey, and I think we had moved, Matt had a few ideas to move things forward with our staff, so that was great. I did get a tour before the respiratory clinic was set up by Councillor Rowe, which was nice to see what they've done there. And I really appreciate all the nurses and doctors and everyone in the healthcare who's working their butts off and just trying to make everything safe for us. And I guess Monday I joined council conversations with Darnelda. I think we were the only two. And just a few people joined, but it was nice kind of quiet talk just to get some perspective and get some feedback about what's happening out in the community, and just some concerns about health and mental well-being of some seniors and different people in our community who may be feeling isolated. So it was just really good to hear that from some of the community members, and just and also some of them, what they're doing out there. We have a great community volunteering, driving groceries around, and there's just so much of that going on. It's nice to see. I think that's all I have to say. And yes, thank you to all our healthcare workers.
Councillor Lamb.
Really don't have too much to say. Yeah, I've been self-isolating, but yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay, well, I got back, I was away for a week in Mexico. Got back on the Saturday, the 14th, just after the province had said self-isolation for 14 days. So I came back home and basically was in my house. And then watched on Monday how my calendar just opened up. All of the in-person meetings disappeared. And then by the end of Monday, it was all full again. But it was all Zoom meetings and teleconferences. And I have to say that I've been really impressed with how quickly the government has gotten together, provincial and federal, Vancouver Coastal Health, how they've just moved things forward as quickly as possible with, just dealing with the situation as it's going forward and changing day to day. So that was a huge, so I mean, that was really good to see and to be part of. And how the coast here, the EOC got started, our staff started working with the other staffs in the other governments up and down the coast here. So currently, I mean, the first week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we had a call with Vancouver Coastal Health, our whole region. So the CAO and I would be on those calls. We had EOC calls every day. I think we did that the first week. And then Thursday of that week, we had a call with the province. So in between that, we were working with staff and other organizations on the coast here. As well, that week, I started getting calls from community groups. So I got calls from some community groups who said, we are providing services and we have concern about how big the need is going to be and whether or not we're going to be able to fulfill that need. And we don't know what the impact on us will be if some of us were to get sick. So that's a concern. And then we had other groups start up in the community providing services to a particular subset, potentially seniors in Gibsons that belong to a particular church, for example, right? So subsets here and there. And then I started having groups reach out who said, we have drivers. We have people who want to volunteer and we don't know who to volunteer to because we're seeing all of these different things happen. And then Jocelin Gillis, right? So she had run for council. She started up a Facebook page with a couple of other women in the community and called it Flatten the Curve, and was starting to hear from people in the community who had needs. For example, we had new mothers. All of a sudden, they were self-isolated at home and needed supplies and couldn't get out to get them. We had people who were looking for thermometers and couldn't find thermometers. So there were all of these different kinds of needs. So in conversation with Catherine Leach from Community Services, I said, what might be a benefit is to actually get all of these various groups together in a way that they can support each other and provide them with access to government resources, because we have buildings, for example, the district CIO. Actually, I think the idea came from our CAO. He said, we should start up a task force. So he's great. Yeah, it was him who said that. But then we kind of ran with that. So some of the staff, Carrie Ann and Lucy and Jennifer, started reaching out to some of the groups in the community, and they would indicate what they needed and that they thought this was a good idea. So Monday night of this past week, I put together a huge, I think I emailed out to 60 people to join in on a Zoom call and just gave them just a little blurb about what it was. We had 58 people show up, and the team leads have been set now for the various different groups: communication, transportation, food, etc. And they've had one meeting. There's going to be another meeting this Friday, and they're going to be up and running. And what's interesting now is Nicholas Simons was actually on the call with us. Well, he went up to Powell River, and today Powell River reached out to us and said, we want to know what you're doing because we want to replicate it up here. So we've had a couple of conversations with them around that. I think I've gotten fairly proficient with Zoom over the last couple of weeks. I think all of us have. We've been setting up meetings, and I've been doing videos. Staff have been posting the videos, so that's been interesting, getting all of that done. Staff have been very supportive, and they're having to change day to day because of what we're dealing with. One of the impacts in our community that we are looking at now and looking at how to deal with is we have closed down our recreation facilities. Arrowhead has closed down, and the homeless shelter and the supportive housing complex have been told by Vancouver Coastal Health that they cannot provide additional services to anybody else but the people who live in their facilities. That means that any of the homeless in our community have nowhere to go to get tents, for example, because the homeless shelter can no longer take donations. They don't have access to showers. So our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, and others in the community are looking at how do we meet the needs of this segment of our community who we've basically shut out of all services. So there is guidance coming forward from Vancouver Coastal Health. They sent something out today, and the EOC is working on that. It's not just an issue here, it is an issue all over the province, and that is being escalated as well through the province and through Vancouver Coastal Health. So thank you to staff for stepping up and dealing with all those. I want to thank Brenda. I was on self-isolation, and so she took me on a virtual tour. Janice pretended to be the patient, and they walked me through how the respiratory assessment clinic would work. So it was great to see. So thank you to all for what you're doing. And I'm going to turn over to Alton Toth for the SCRD report.
Sure. My SCRD report is attached. There's 2 of them because we canceled the council meeting. I'm just going to add on to it that almost overnight, as this started to deteriorate, the SCRD tech wizards managed to overhaul the agenda page. You can access the agenda, the YouTube stream, and the Zoom links all from one spot now. We had 2 days of emergency board meetings to amend our financial plan before the March 31st deadline, which has now passed. On the first day, 30th, we asked staff to take a closer look at the rec budget to find some additional savings. And on the 31st, we passed a financial plan amendment bylaw that resulted in a change in the residential tax rate for the SCRD portion of the District of Sechelt tax bill of an increase of 0.88% overall. Yeah, other than that, happy to answer any questions from my report. I did miss the March 19th Infrastructure Services Committee meeting, so hopefully Councillor McLean will speak to that one. Thank you.
So I think the mayor is muted, so I'm just going to jump in.
Yes, I mute myself and then forget. Go ahead.
So the infrastructure services report, there is a report on, or an update on water meters. So the plan is to go out for electoral approval in 2020. And then once, if approved, it'll take about 1.5 years to install. So that puts us in somewhere in 2020 to get water meters up and operational in Sechelt. With that, a rate structure review will also happen in 2020. So that's the point when we know what the variable rates will be for water and what that structure will look like. We will not know what the variable rate will be until then. The SCRD would like to get a better understanding of all of their costs, all of the water that's being used, so then they can make a fair pricing system when we do go to more of a variable rate rather than the flat rate that we have now. There is a couple points around water, which I think may have changed, but I didn't quite pay enough attention to the budget meeting of this week, such as the Water Supply Committee and the reservoir study. But I believe the contract for the Church Road well is moving forward. And the SCRD also implemented a 1-year pilot program to accept boats and RVs at the dump. So that's going to be really good for derelict boats and dumping up the Forest Service roads. However, if you do want to bring it to the dump, you need to cut it into 4-foot sections and then strip it of metal and wood. So there's quite a process there, but at least this stuff has a place to go. And then at the end of the meeting, there was a discussion around the Flume Road Highway 101 intersection. The SCRD recently voted to remove bus service in one direction on Route 1. from that intersection due to its unsafe structure. So I think the SRD is going to be pushing hard to get some improvements there so we can put the bus service back on Flume Road and service those residents. And that's all I got for SCRD.
Thank you. I will comment on the Water Governance Board. We have actually requested that be moved back. That's one of the ones that was is no longer going to be funded, and partly because we can't really get everybody together at this point. And so it's one of the ones that's going to be coming forward in 2021. Councillor Scott, did you have anything you wanted to report in a council report?
I think I'm working now. Can you hear me? Actually, I don't have anything to report on the council side. I've just been at my other job. I'm one of only 2 pilots left and managing that side of the company and ensuring that we're able to help with it, whichever's needed for the government on emergency access to all the remote coastal communities. And that's basically my job right now. So that's about it.
Thank you for what you're doing. It's a needed service. On one of the airlines that was servicing Bella Coola, and that area actually shut down. And so Vancouver Coastal Health actually went to the provincial government and said, this is a necessary service. We have, patients who need to get in and out. We have staff who need to get in and out. Tests have to come in and out. And so they've had to put in other service to ensure that what's required for that community is provided. And so on a personal note, my granddaughter's dad, his wife is having a baby in a couple of weeks. So she actually had to get out because they're not allowed to give birth in Bella. So they don't have the facilities there in case something goes wrong. And so she actually had to leave just in the last week. And there's no more plane out. So she's out, she'll be fine. So thank you for what you're doing as well. Everybody's contributing in their own way to support our community in this. So let's move on to council correspondence on page 165. So there are a number of items on here. First, a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then any that you'd like to pull out for discussion? Let's start with number 1. I'd like that referred to, a motion to refer that one to the community forest for some feedback. That's moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. That's with regards to the Wilson Legacy Forest. Any others? Councillor Toth?
Number 7 from Teresa Logan is actually flagged for action.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to make a recommendation on that?
I would, but I'd like to know more about the fact that deadline is listed here as March 30th. Was that extended? Did they miss the cutoff?
Yeah, and Joanne?
Sorry about that, Your Worship. Yes, we did confirm the deadline of March 30th was the organization's deadline so that they would have time to turn it around. But ICE-T's grant application deadline is actually April 3rd. So we will have time, quickly tomorrow to let them know what council decides before they put in their application. Thank you.
And I think they may even have pushed that date back again. I just got another email today. So I'm not sure, but if we go with the April 3rd, we know for sure it'll get in. So Councillor Toth would like to make a recommendation.
Yep, I'd like to make a recommendation that we write a letter of support for this grant application for this project for our downtown.
Is there a seconder? Seconded? All those in favor? Thank you. I'd like to look at, just make a note of number 6, Community Wildfire Resiliency Grant. So this is the program that the community forest was looking at doing, and then they changed the criteria. So this is, the SCRD applied on behalf of the Sunshine Coast for a wildfire resiliency grant. So basically it's looking at the whole Sunshine Coast and looking at what are the areas that need to be addressed in order to take care of the interface between forest and urban areas. So they've received about 118,000, I think it was. I don't have the dollar amount. It's in the letter, but 118,000, and that would work on the whole Sunshine Coast. And they anticipate that's 100% of the cost of the plan. Councillor Toth, did you want to speak? Yeah.
Yep, it's 114,850, and it's actually the third highest grant handout within the Coastal Fire Center. So that's pretty substantial. It's a good win for Team Sunshine Coast.
Perfect. And then the last one I'd like to have staff address. That's number 8. Canadian Federation of what is it? I'm going to get there. Canadian something.
Federation of Independent
Yes.
Business.
Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Yes. So they are asking that we look at waiving interest and penalties for unpaid property tax installments for a minimum of 60 days for business, and waive all interest and penalties for unpaid water and wastewater billings for a minimum period of 60 days. And then call on the provincial government to expand the property tax deferral program to provide immediate relief for small businesses and nonprofits. And I know we've had other correspondence around this as well. I do know that on the first call that we were on with the province, they actually have been talking about potentially deferring or delaying when people have to pay taxes. They have not allowed the municipalities and the regional districts to delay when we actually have to submit budgets, because one of the pieces that we put forward to them is we're totally in favor of them delaying when people have to pay their property taxes and their business taxes, but there will be an impact on us to keep our municipality running if we don't actually have that revenue. So that is something that they have to take into account. So I turn to our Chief Financial Officer and get some preliminary comments on this request.
Thank you, Your Worship. At this point, I don't see an access for us to do that kind of relief, but there was a couple of an article that came out that the City of Victoria was doing something. So I'll phone down and we'll try and get some information on how they were able to work that through the community charter. And we'll definitely be keeping our ears open to see what the province will do to allow some kind of extension for payment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw on that list that was sent in with the other letter that Vancouver, Victoria, and was it Delta? I think we're doing something, but Vancouver's under a different charter than we are. Victoria and Delta would be under the same as us.
Same charter.
But I know that in the community charter, it indicates when we have to collect and how much we have to charge for interest. So that's a provincial change that would need to come out. So we'll look for more information at our Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I'd encourage the mayor in her calls with the province to continue pushing for expanding the deferral program. So currently, specific people can defer their taxes and have it paid by the province, so it doesn't affect the operation of the town. And I think it'd be a really good opportunity to expand that to people who've been affected by the COVID-19 outbreak. And I think that's a conversation that the mayors are having with the province right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they are now setting up weekly meetings on Thursdays, and they've split it up among the regions. So we will be in probably an AVICC group, right? So Vancouver Island Coastal Community Group on Thursday with the province. So we'll definitely bring that up. Any other questions or comments? Any other correspondence that you wanted to address? Councillor McLean.
Number 2, regarding the habitat loss report.
Yes.
So this is a meeting that the mayor and I took with this group privately. And one of the things we said is we would consider doing a wildlife corridor study. So trying to understand where the opportunities exist to maintain wildlife corridors, specifically for black bears, so they can continue to roam through their natural environment without people getting in the way. So I'd like this forwarded onto our budget process and see if we can find money for it and kind of discuss everything at once when we do that.
Okay. So that's a recommendation. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? I think they're looking for what, $4,620. It would be a joint project between us and the other governments on the Sunshine Coast. Because bears don't, they don't look at municipal boundaries. Okay, well, I'll second that. Yes, Councillor Toth.
Would this be appropriate for a budget process, or would this be better off having gone through the CIP or the grant and aid programs of the regional district or similar processes?
I don't know if it would qualify for our CIP program. Councillor McLean, you'd be more familiar, or Councillor Rowe?
Yeah, like it could qualify under the environmental side, but at the end of the day, the purpose of this is to change our planning regulations. So it's really a government operation that's assisted by the not-for-profit industry. If we just do this study and don't back it up with anything, it's completely useless. So it needs to be part of our planning process, our OCP, and some of our other stuff. So it's kind of a first step of a government process. So I think that's more appropriate for a general tax base than the CIP program.
Yeah, the way what they were looking at doing in here, in a nutshell, because it's a fairly long submission that they gave us. Bears and other wildlife have their natural corridors. And we actually had one of our planners in the meeting as well. And it was very evident that we have no idea where these are in our community. So if we have a developer who comes forward with a large piece of property, if we actually know where the wildlife corridors are, development could be done on those properties to leave those wildlife corridors. But if we don't know, then we are actually increasing bear and human interactions, which usually the bear loses. So we have areas where this could be impactful, and it would just, it gives us that information up front to be able to lay that onto the developments when they come forward. So they would be looking at the whole Sunshine Coast and identifying those for us and providing us with that information. They will be taking some of the information the province has, because there is a little bit, but not to the level that we would need it for our planning purposes. So any questions? So there's a motion to refer this to the planning or the budget process. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Toth, would you like that recorded? No? Okay. Any other correspondence? All right. Any emergency items to bring forward? No? Okay. Motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And then, Carrie Ann, do we have any questions?